Hi, this is Rob Ryder speaking out of West Cornwall, and I'd just like to do a short follow-on video from the previous one regarding terrain theory for the mind. So obviously I'm kind of saying just not as a fact, but as an illustration, if we look at the serpent as our own ego, manipulating ourselves to feel that we know better than creation. Now, my wife's Peruvian, I've lived in Peru, and if you go out there, out of Lima, which is a modern capital, but you go out of Lima into the country, and I've seen these elongated heads in museums, and lots of people will be very open to the idea of extraterrestrial visitors, the gods coming down from the heavens, the fallen angels. So that's a possibility, maybe there's some factual information in that the serpent represents these fallen angels who manipulated mankind. Either way, like I say, my idea as an illustration is to get people to realize that whether it was our own ego manipulating our spiritual selves, or whether it was another being, should we say, it was all about manipulating the ego that thinks it knows better. So again, it was Eve, feminine spiritual connection, that was tempted. Now we've got, obviously, we're talking about masculine and feminine here, not necessarily male and female. So Eve could represent the feminine within all of us. That was tempted. Now, was it tempted by an exterior entity that tempted our ego, or was it that our own ego? Doesn't really matter, because the idea is we're being driven by our ego and controlled by ego, which has its place. It's great for dissecting information, but you're not going to get any real truth in there. The money book that I published, I had to logically think about that, process information, take on information, and come up with a solution to the monetary problem, which is quite simple, but you don't do that by spiritual connection. You can maybe see something's wrong via that, but to dissect the monetary system, process it, put forward a solution, you're using, your own ego mind, shall we say. This logical thinking, that because the monetary system isn't a part of nature, so you're using a separate part of the mind, really. So I believe that our problems have come from this disconnection to spiritual thinking. Now, I've been, since 2011, looking into natural health. I've been lucky enough to study with medical biochemist Trevor Gunn, who wrote the book The Science of Health and Healing. He did a holistic pathology course. Fantastic course, goes into lots of details of the nature of illness, how these things can progress, how you can go from acute to chronic and then come back to acute and then come back to a state of balance. Great information. Since 2014, I've worked with Dr. Patrick Quanton, done many seminars together, learned masses and masses of information on the details within disease, things that affect people, that affect one person, doesn't affect another, how individual we are, especially the state of the mind and the perception on health. But the last couple of years, a lot of them details, and I do my own health seminars myself and talk, and I've got one hopefully coming up soon in the spring, but all that information, the details, I tend to forget absolutely everything. Because the more you understand the depth of natural healing within yourself, the simple example is you cut your finger, you take any debris out, keep it clean, keep the air to it, it heals itself. Don't know how that happens, doesn't matter. Simple as that. So do I need to understand the details that my body is self-healing? No, not when you get to a level where you accept that. The lion, if he gets injured, he sleeps under a bush for a week, doesn't eat, comes out and he heals up or he dies. Simple as that. So you give in to body consciousness, the intelligence that runs through you. The lion isn't trying to figure out, should I do this, should I do that? Do I need to? No, he just knows instinctively what to do. It's instinctual, it's inside us. And so I've almost, the knowledge that I've gained in terms of details, I can't hold it in my mind because it doesn't seem relevant to me. It's great if you're trying to educate other people in this, but I struggle holding in the details of this knowledge because it just, once you accept your body's health healing and illness as a symptom of your life out of balance, then there's nothing to know. Just like give into body consciousness and let nature sort itself out and become aware of possibly why you're out of balance, and everything else will fix itself. It's self-healing system. So I've got to a point, especially in the last few years, that I don't like thinking. And even though it took a lot of thinking to write the books I've wrote over the last couple of years, but I do not like thinking because all that's thinking is ego mind in a way. It's trying to figure out the world when actually we're just part of it. Having lived in the Amazon and visited villages in the Amazon, you see not a lot of thinking going on. If you want to build a new house, fair enough, you have to look at the structure and put things together. But the day-to-day life in a lot of these villages, just people just do what they need to do without thinking. If you need to fish, you fish. If you need to pick some crops, you do it. You just do it without thinking. So in the West has been, especially, and modern society, totally and utterly taken over by the ego mind. So again, whether it was an exterior entity that tempted the spiritual side of humanity, or whether it was our own ego that we come aware of and we didn't know how to control it, that tempted ourselves, doesn't really matter. In fact, if we've come away from natural thinking, you could say in the Garden of Eden, everything was in harmony. Adam and Eve were living in harmony with nature until they thought they knew better, or were tempted to think that they knew better. And if you look at a lot of activism now, the woke ideology especially, and the alphabet people, it's pure ego driven. I know better. I mean, you could say narcissistic, toxic behavior coming from toxic minds, thinking they know better. And it's all peace, diversity, tolerance, acceptance, as long as you agree with them. And then it's very aggressive and toxic. And this is the mindset that's taking over, especially the West, but the world, obviously being driven and manipulated to. But it's a further detachment from our natural state of being. And you can't reason with these people. It's impossible. Absolutely point. I don't deal with these people unless they come into my life, because totally pointless. And I remember I was at a march a couple of years ago regarding deaths from these medical treatments, shall we say, recently, and there was pictures of people who had died from deaths, and one of these alphabet people, young girl in college, come up, took the leaflet off me, looked at me, laughed and ripped the leaflet up. So laughing at people who had died, and that you can't touch that mindset. That is so far gone these people are. And a lot of these activists now, even within the alphabet movement, the T's now are going at war with the rest of them, because the L's are seeing their identity being destroyed by the T's. So they're at war with each other. And not all people who identify with them letters are part of that movement. A lot of people distance themselves with that movement because it's not what the letters represent. It's the mindset of the people in it, and there's a lot of heterosexual people in there. And the T movement is just a lot of these people, and I've spoken to some, consider themselves spiritual light workers, believe it or not. But what it actually is distancing themselves further and further away from true spirituality and nature. They're actually opposing nature more than ever now. When you say a man can be a woman, It's a physical impossibility, even though they never define what they're actually talking about, what gender is, what biological sex is. You can't, it's a crazy conversation. I don't bother, don't get involved at all unless they're trying to impose it on me. So humanity's problem is this obsession with, totally locked into this ego mind, self-important, narcissistic mindset that's driving everything. The only solution is what Patrick calls in our book, A Conscious Humanity, Morality, Freedom and Natural Law, or Freedom, Morality and Natural Law with Patrick Quanton, is to accept the prison of nature. So a lot of this movement and these activists, you can't define me, we want diversity, real diversity, but they don't accept the prison of nature. In the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were confined to the walls and the prisons of nature for their own benefit. Their ego mind thought, I know better, I want to go beyond them boundaries, and look at the absolute disaster of mankind now. It's purely because man didn't want to live within the prison and the boundaries and the walls of nature. Nature has been created for our benefits. Those boundaries will grow as our consciousness evolves, and we'll break them boundaries and extend them boundaries. But that will happen through a spiritual, conscious expansion, not through ego mind thinking it knows better. And these people think that they can create a version of conscious evolution as they, through their ego mind, see fit. And what they're actually doing is completely rejecting nature. And this education, I've said before, especially for young children, what you're actually saying to a child is you may have been born defective. It's the most anti-spiritual thing you can ever say to anyone. A young child at an age when their brain is developing, their mind is developing, to say you may be defective. Later on in life, you may have to cut bits on, add bits on, so you can become this perfect human being. When in fact, however you are is the perfect version of you. If you were born with a deformity, if you were born with a low IQ, whatever, however you were born is the perfect version of you. And if truly people want to spiritually empower people, they should get them to embrace who they are, not who they think they are, not who they want to be. You are who you are. There's nothing you can do about that. You can expand the fullness of who you are, but you are who you are. So you've got the prison of the whole, your own being as an individual human being, and then you've got the prison of the whole human experience. And when you embrace who you are and embrace the human experience, you will thrive. But this is flipped and inverted on its head in saying, no, you can choose who you are. You can. You're created a certain way. Simple as that. If you're an introvert and you try to be an extrovert, it'll always be uncomfortable. It won't work. You are who you are. So we need to go back to the Garden of Eden and understand the boundaries of nature, of creation, the human boundaries, how we're supposed to live. And eventually we'll get more into an instinctual way of living again. Now, with modern societies, you're going to need this conscious mind to figure things out, to build things, etc. But it's got to be in balance, and it's not in a minute. So again, we need to go back to the consciousness in the Garden of Eden and basically accept the prisons of nature.